Chapter 6, Bed Manufacture and Assembly. The materials used: you'll need two 8-foot pieces of 1 1/4 inch by 1 1/4 inch slotted angle metal, 10 18-inch by 2 foot 16 gauge steel plates, some nuts and bolts. You'll need 40 1/2 inch 5/16 inch bolts, 20 1 inch 5/16 inch bolts, 20 1 1/2 inch 5/16 inch bolts, 40 5/16 inch acorn nuts, 20 5/16 inch regular nuts, and 20 5/16 inch lock nuts. You'll need 30 5/16 inch by 1 1/2 inch fender washers, and some brass fixtures. You'll need two 3/4 inch female garden hose, two 1/2 inch female pipe thread adapters, two 3/4 inch male garden hose, two 1/2 inch male pipe thread adapters, one 1/2 inch female pipe thread to 1/2 inch brass barb, and one 1/2 inch male pipe thread to 1/2 inch brass barb. The 6 washers with the inner diameter between 1/2 inch and 5/8 inch that we set aside in the previous section. You'll also need a 500-gallon PVC nylon mesh pond liner, around 10 foot square, 8 40-pound bags of expanded shale, approximately 12 feet of 1 inch Schedule 40 PVC pipe, two 1 inch PVC end caps, two 1 inch PVC elbows, 1 inch PVC T, a 1 inch by 3/4 inch male hose thread adapter, and approximately 4 feet of 1/2 inch inner diameter clear vinyl tubing. Tools used: we're going to need a measuring tape, a T-square, Sharpie, chop saw, clamps, a drill press, a 3/8 inch drill bit, a 3/4 inch hole saw, a 4-pound hammer, 1/2 inch wrench, 1/2 inch ratchet, a Dremel with a grinding bit, a hand drill with a 1/4 inch drill bit, PVC pipe cutter, scissors, knife, aquarium grade silicone, and some PVC glue and primer.
Hortodomi utilizes square foot gardening planting in a raised gardening bed. This means we use less than 1/5 the amount of water of popular growing methods. We actually think we save a lot more water than that. Our previous versions of Hortodomi only had 12-inch deep beds, and they didn't provide us the ability to recapture the bed water. There was also a concern that the bed depth might not be adequate for some of the root varieties. This bed is 50% deeper and lined for potential water reclamation. Place the perforated steel angle bracket against the 18-inch side of steel bed plate and count how many holes will fit along the edge. For uniformity, I make sure to cut between the holes of the perforated steel. Wearing the appropriate safety attire, use the chop saw to cut 10 even pieces of perforated steel angle bracket. Place one of the pieces of angle bracket along the 18-inch edge of the bed plate and mark 3 bolt holes to be drilled. Do the same on the opposing 18-inch side of the plate. This would also be a good time to mark the 3 irrigation portholes that need to be drilled. On the same plate that has the bolt holes marked, place a mark centered and 2 inches from the top. Then make a pair of marks 3 inches from the bottom, each 9 inches from their respective sides, 3 inches from the center line, and 6 inches from one another. Stack the steel plates neatly and clamp them together, with the marked plate facing upward and visible. Wearing the appropriate safety attire, use the drill press to drill the 6 3/8 inch bolt holes through the stack of plates. Take your time, making sure to keep the bit cooled. Drilling through this neat stack delivers uniformity.
Unclamp the plates and use the drill press to drill the 3 3/4 inch irrigation portholes in the primary bed plate. It's a good idea to install the brass fixtures to make sure everything fits properly. Use the fender washers with the opened inner diameter set aside from the worm bin manufacturing section, placing them between the brass fixture and the steel bed wall.
The perforated steel angle bracket needs to be opened up a number of degrees to be appropriate for a decagon instead of a square. Technically, 144 degrees. We've used much more rigid, heavier gauge steel bracket in past fabrications, which required at least the use of the conduit press to bend it open. We didn't see the need for such overbuilding and opted for a lighter gauge steel. This also meant I only needed to tap the bracket with a 4-pound hammer to open it to a workable degree. Do not flatten the angle bracket. If it's flat, you know you've gone too far. Way too far. Next, you'll want to clear your space for installation, if it isn't already. We installed this orthodomy at Open Source Ecology's factory farm, which required some clearing with a string trimmer. Some things to consider when picking your installation location. Does the space receive adequate sunlight, or do you have an adequate spectrum of supplementary bulbs installed? Can you expect to be able to reasonably provide electricity, water, and either Ethernet or Wi-Fi to the location? If the ground isn't perfectly level, you will want to place the primary bed plate, and thus the bedwater and earthworm tea reclamation drains, at the least elevated position to provide for best drainage. You will also then want to situate the control stand and fertigation unit at an even lower elevation to provide for even better draining and recapture of the valuable earthworm tea. Once the space has been selected and cleared, lay out the bed plates for assembly, with the primary plate in its appropriate position, base to base for proper distancing. We don't want the brass fixtures in the primary plate yet. Also lay out the 10 pieces of steel angle bracket, the 40 half-inch bolts, the 40 acorn nuts, and the half-inch wrench and ratchet. The half-inch bolts go through the angle bracket and into the two bottom holes of the bed plates, where it is capped tightly on the other side, on the inside of the bed, with an acorn nut. Next, put 1.5-inch bolts in the remaining 20 top holes, with a simple nut behind it for easy removal. These longer bolts are only going to be used to balance the dome in position, after which they will be replaced, but they still need to be tightened firmly for better situation. Place the dome on top of the bed to make sure everything fits nicely and is in its most suitable place. Once everything looks appropriate, mark the bed location, perhaps using bricks on the outside of the bed walls, etc. Then remove the dome, leaving the bed in place. You should now remove the 20 1.5-inch bolts from the top holes, leaving those holes empty. Next, you'll be lining the inside of the bed with the pond liner. Before you lay the liner in, you may want to put a layer of dirt or sand down inside the bed. This will decrease the chances of something puncturing the pond liner. Lay the pond liner in centered over the bed so that the opposing sides have approximately the same overhanging length. Lay it in loosely, leaving plenty of extra slack inside the bed space. Push the liner to the base of every plate. The neater you lay the pond liner in now, the easier it will be to work with in the future steps. Avoid wadding the liner, and try instead for deep folds when necessary. Now you can begin to pour in a few bags of expanded shale. This will help to hold the liner down snugly, better filling the space. A couple inches of expanded shale should do fine for now. In this step, we're going to install the bed's brass fittings through the pond liner. You'll want the brass fittings and their washers. You'll also want some aquarium-grade silicone and something to cut the pond liner with. I'll be using Bobby McMurray's buck knife. Using your hand to keep the pond liner in the correct place, cut a hole in the liner just large enough for the brass fixture to go through. I cut X's. I learned after filming, however, that you shouldn't make straight cuts in the liner, that it will tear, but you should rather make circular cuts. I've attempted to mitigate this potential pond liner tearing with a big fender washer layered in silicone. Once all the brass fixtures are washered, siliconed, and properly placed, then tighten. Now we're going to make the bed water reclamation drain. First, cut 5 lengths of 1-inch PVC pipe, 2 3-foot lengths, 1 2-foot 3-inch length, 1 1-foot 9-inch length, and 1 1-foot 6-inch length. Using the 2 1-inch PVC end caps, the 2 1-inch PVC elbows, and the 1-inch PVC T, assemble an off-centered goal post with the 3-foot lengths as the 2 extended lengths and the 1-foot 6-inch length as the base. Put the 2-foot 3-inch length on the same side as you installed your water reclamation port in the bed wall. The reason being that you're actually assembling the drain pipe upside down and will be drilling drain holes shortly before gluing. If it seems backwards, it's because it is. I learned the hard way by not paying attention and had to swap and reinstall my worm tea and water reclamation fixtures. Next, drill a series of holes along the top of the pipe to serve as drain holes. After you've drilled all the drain holes, and double check to make sure it'll be properly situated with the water reclamation port after it's turned over, prime and glue the water reclamation drain pipe together. After the drain pipe has had time to dry and then subsequently has been rinsed, place it in the garden bed, drain holes down. Thread the 3/4 inch MHT to 1 inch PVC into the water reclamation brass fixture on the inside of the bed. When everything looks like it fits properly, prime and glue the drain pipe to the 3/4 inch MHT to 1 inch PVC. Next, take the 4 feet of 1/2 inch inner diameter clear vinyl tubing and slide it all the way onto the 1/2 inch barb on the worm T reclamation brass fixture on the inside of the bed. Then lay the pipe so that the end is close to the center of the bed where the worm bin will be draining. Continue adding expanded shell until it's approximately 6 inches deep and covers the water reclamation drain pipe. Try to maintain visibility of the worm T reclamation tube. Next, place the worm bin in the center of the bed. Then connect the worm T reclamation tube to the 1/2 inch barb in the base of the worm bin, before centering the bin in the bed. The corners of the worm bin should be pointed at the centers of the bed walls. Due to a blanked tape, scenes from the original filling of the bed with soil at Factory Farm were lost. Regretfully, those scenes also included the assistance of our new friend, Georgos Kakaris, from Marathon, Greece. We were looking forward to using those clips, as Georgos provided a fine example of workmanship to the viewers. A supplementary chapter will be filmed dealing with bed filling and soil amendment. Once the bed has been filled with soil, compost, and all the desired amendments, the pond liner can be pulled down fairly tight over the top of the bed. Now, take the 21 inch bolts, the 35/16 inch fender washers, the pond liner cutting tool, and the 1/2 inch wrench and ratchet. Pull the pond liner down over the top of the bed, locate the bolt hole, and make small cuts in the pond liner on either side. Place a fender washer on the 1 inch bolt before forcing it through the hole in the pond liner, the bolt hole in the bed, and then through the hole in the pond liner on the opposite side. You will be able to fit a fender washer on the back side as well, but only once in each corner. Tighten all 20 down snugly with 5/16 inch lock nuts. Once all the washers and bolts are in place, you can trim off the excess pond liner, leaving more than a few inches of overhang. And that concludes the bed manufacture and assembly portion of this DIY Hortodomi instruction.